What's up, Ego Hackers? Welcome to CS Joseph Podcast. I'm your host, CS Joseph, and today's Acolyte question, another ISTP woman question, and it is, how can I, as an ISTP UD SF, meet all of the 8 rules for loving an ENTP who is unconscious developed while staying in my own femininity? It's a huge word salad, but definitely a valid question, and we're going to be discussing the answer in this show. So, unconscious developed ENTP is the thing. What does unconscious developed ENTPs need? Why are they unconscious developed? Well, it's because they have an abundance of their shadow pole, and their shadow pole is malevolence. Malevolence is basically, life has been extremely harsh to the ENTP. He has an abundance of malevolence in his life, stored up memories of pain. But with that pain comes a high level of lessons learned, basically. Lessons learned. And those lessons are very powerful. What ends up happening to the ENTP is the ENTP allows himself to be malevolent to other people. Sometimes the ENTP wants to increase the suffering of other people around them so that those people learn the same exact lessons that the ENTP has learned in their life as well. And this is very common among unconscious developed ENTPs. Very common. To the point where you can just expect that that's going to happen all the time. They're going to be harsh to you. They're also going to desecrate you because their shadow wheel, which is based on the cognitive origin of reverence, their shadow wheel has desecration. If they are unconscious developed, that means they are going to desecrate, which means they're going to take your ego down a few notches, which is necessary for an ISTP woman anyway because she has the deadly sin of pride. So if he is actually taking your ego down a few notches and being malevolent towards you and increasing your suffering so you can learn some lessons, maybe you should accept that and thank him for doing that, because he's only doing that because he cares about you. Literally. He only does it because he cares about you. That's the only reason he's doing it. He's not being a sadist. He's not being spiteful, per se. Sometimes they can be sadistic and spiteful, sure, if their warrior energy is off. But at the same time, he is trying to grow you. That is why the ENTP man is ultimately there in that position to get you to the point where you're growing. That's what it means. That's the entire point, right? So be aware of that. Understand that that's where that comes from. It's very necessary. It's very necessary. It's a requirement. It's an absolute requirement in your life. So make sure you're fulfilling that requirement by understanding what that means and why it means that malevolence is there. But because he's malevolent, he has something else very sensitive about him, right? And this is something that ISTP women need to learn about unconscious developed ENTPs when they're in a sexual relationship with them. There's 2 things that an ENTP man who's unconscious developed needs from a woman in a sexual relationship. The first is they need their ego stroked. Seriously. Which is extremely hard, extremely difficult for a prideful ISTP to actually do. It's extremely hard. Stroking other people's egos when oftentimes the ISTP is looking for their ego to be stroked. And then all of a sudden the ENTP desecrates them and takes their ego down a notch. And it can actually lead to conflict within the context of the relationship. And ultimately, this is probably one of the main reasons why breakups actually happen. And it sucks. It really sucks when these breakups happen between ENTPs and ISTPs, but it is a thing. You just gotta learn how to stroke their ego. That's really, and the reason why is because life has been so malevolent to them, life has basically also desecrated them consistently. Life has torn down the ego of the unconscious developed ENTP his whole life, his entire upbringing especially, right? Especially if he's UDUF, that's constant. If he's UDUF or UDSF, which is the hope energy of the ENTP, not so much. Not so much. But it still is a problem. You got to be aware of this risk. Consistently aware of this risk. The other thing the ENTP man is going to need is fanaticism. No one's really been a fan of him his whole life, or especially in his upbringing. whole life it's UD-UF, or if he's UD-SF, it's mostly centered around his upbringing. Which means, like, if you're a woman and you're in a relationship with an unconscious developed ENTP, if you're not fangirling over him all the time, and I literally mean all the time, if you're not fangirling over him, he's going to choose the woman who fangirls over him above you. And if you're not willing to be the fangirl, get out. You may as well just give up. Give up. You just may give up on that relationship. I mean, that's kind of how I am. Like, I'm unconscious developed. If my woman is not fangirling over me, I will have nothing to do with her. I need that fangirling in my life. That's just how it is. I need that fangirling, and honestly, I need my ego stroked. I'm too used to it being torn down by everyone throughout my whole life, especially being UD-UF myself, that if I'm not getting that, it's just not going to happen. The other problem with the ENTP is that they have INTJ shadow, or unconscious. And that INTJ thing has this issue where it door slams. So if you are being consistent about not fangirling over your ENTP, if you are being consistent with not stroking his ego, eventually his INTJ shadow is just going to door slam you, and you've lost your chance with him. And you will never get that chance with him again due to that failure on your part. It sucks. That's just how life works. And if you think that's wrong, if you think that's disingenuous, well, get over yourself. Because that's literally how life works. I can't explain it any more than that. That's just the grim reality. That's just the grim reality. The other thing is, too, how to stay in your feminine while you do this. If you're not expressing needs, emotions, desires, and problems, and giving the ENTP the opportunity to solve your problems, if you're not asking him permission for basically almost every little thing in your life and following his lead, even if you don't like it, even if you think that you disagree with it, you're not going to get anywhere with the ENTP. The ENTP has to be comfortable with you following his lead on a consistent basis. And then once he is comfortable with you following his lead, only then will he grant your NI child the opportunity to make decisions on your own. So that the bigger decisions, he'll trust you the smaller decisions, and the bigger decisions you'll have to remain following his lead on indefinitely. And basically giving up that, you're putting his choice above yours, basically. And if you're not willing to submit to him in that regard, his INTJ shadow, guess what, is going to door slam you. He's going to cut you off, and there's no way you can come back to that relationship. It is over. You don't want to find yourself in that situation. And ISTP women are notoriously masculine. They are notoriously emasculating. And it's really sad that this happens on a consistent basis. At least NTJ women have a higher chance of, getting through that. And it's one of the reasons why ESTP women are often chosen more often than ISTP women for ENTP men, because at least the ESTP women have INJ subconscious with their INFJ subconscious. Because that INFJ subconscious is actually more willing to listen, more willing to submit to a man's lead, to the ENTP's man's lead. So if you're an ISTP and you're struggling with an unconscious developed ENTP, if you're not going to play by his rules, you may as well just give up and move on. And probably an ENTP, an unconscious developed ENTP, is really just not for you. You have to get to a point where you're willing to accept that truth. Because you either bend the knee and follow his lead and prove a track record of following his lead by expressing needs, emotions, desires, and problems, and do it permissively, and permissively for everything. And if you're not willing to do that, nope, you have no value to the ENTP. He'll just see you as emasculating. He will just see you as gross. He will see you as somebody that just like, hey, I can't be in a relationship with this woman, get out. And that's really sad, but that's the truth. That's the regular truth. It's the harsh truth of reality. ISTP women struggle so much with being feminine. And every single ISTP woman who has ever attempted to be close to me ever in my entire life has all been emasculating. They didn't fangirl enough. They didn't stroke my ego enough. They didn't follow my lead. They want to disagree with literally everything I say. Gross. Emasculating. Disgusting. Get away from me. I don't want to have anything to do with them ever again. And it's why consistently I keep door slamming them over and over and over throughout my life. I especially had that problem in my late 20s. Oh my God. Like, there's a period in my late 20s where I dated like so many women within a very short period of time. I didn't I wouldn't unite myself with them because I don't want to find my SI inferior having Stockholm syndrome with them. But the thing is, though, is that like the reality of the situation is that they were just so emasculating. Like on date 1 or date 2, I just like, you know what? I got to get out of here. She's just gross. There's no way she'd ever follow my lead. And just to have that when you as an ENTP are like, especially unconscious developed, using your INTJ shadow to actually invest in that woman, and she's just returning it with pride, returning it with trying to solve my problems for me, giving me advice that I never asked for or led her to do. It's horrible. It's just really gross. And again, that's why there's consistent problems on a regular basis. And it just keeps growing and growing and growing and getting worse over time. So oftentimes I get to that point and it's just like, you know what? I'm done. Got to cut you off. Yourself perpetually alone anyway, because they can't get over the fact that they're not feminine enough, that they don't express, they don't have that level of self-acceptance because they're too busy looking at other people to provide that self-acceptance, or to accept them, that external acceptance, right? Which is a form of people-pleasing if you think about it. This sucks. This sucks for them. Because they are never actually trained by the mature feminine on how to actually be feminine to begin with. I feel bad for them. I often do. But at the same time, I can't have them in my life. I just can't. I have no patience for it whatsoever. A woman is either going to follow my lead or she is not going to follow my lead. And the woman that does follow my lead is the one who gets my devotion. That's just how it is. There's nothing that will get in the way of that. Never get in the way of that. So, anyway, I think that answered this question for this episode. Thank you all for watching and listening. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.